The night was colder than usual in Chicago's South Side. Neon lights flickered over half-broken stores, and the sound of sirens echoed far too often. In a small, run-down apartment, Marcus Hill, a 17-year-old boy, sat staring at the peeling paint on the wall. Marcus's life had been anything but easy. His father had abandoned the family when Marcus was only 5. His mother, a waitress at a downtown diner, worked double shifts just to keep food on the table. But bills piled up and eviction notices came one after another. At school, Marcus was bright but constantly distracted. He loved reading about detectives, heroes, and men who stood up for justice, but reality around him was far darker. Gangs ruled the blocks, and drug dealers became role models for kids his age. Marcus wanted out, but poverty has a way of caging dreams. That evening, his best friend Jamal came knocking. Jamal was a year older, always dressed in flashy sneakers and gold chains. He carried the aura of someone who already belonged to the streets. "Marcus, you hungry?" Jamal smirked, holding a greasy burger in one hand. "I got a way you won't ever go broke again. Easy money, bro. No one's gonna hand us anything, so we take it." Marcus hesitated. He knew what Jamal meant. Theft, hustling, the kind of stuff he had always promised himself he'd never do. But then he remembered his mom's tired face, the empty fridge, and the landlord's last warning. For the first time in his young life, Marcus felt the shadows of crime pulling him in, and as he stepped out of the apartment with Jamal that night, a storm began brewing, one that would test not only his survival but his soul. The streets of South Chicago were buzzing with their usual chaos that night. Sirens, drunken shouts, and the low thump of bass spilling out from a passing car. Marcus walked beside Jamal, his hands shoved deep in his hoodie pocket, his heart pounding against his ribs. "Relax, bro," Jamal whispered, noticing Marcus's nervousness. "It's nothing big, just a corner store. Old man behind the counter barely moves faster than a turtle. In and out, 5 minutes tops." Marcus swallowed hard. "You sure about this? What if what? You gonna keep starving? You wanna watch your mom work herself to death? Man, open your eyes. The world doesn't give second chances." The words stung. Marcus hated that Jamal was right about their struggles, but something deep inside told him this wasn't the way. Still, when you're desperate, morality feels like a luxury. They reached the small convenience store, a dimly lit place on the corner of 81st Street. The neon open sign buzzed faintly, casting a sickly glow across the cracked windows. Jamal pulled out a small pocket knife, flipping it open with a grin. "Just keep your hoodie up and follow my lead." The bell above the door jingled as they walked in. The old man behind the counter, Mr. Patel, looked up from his newspaper, adjusting his glasses. He had probably seen dozens of kids like them, but he didn't expect what came next. Jamal slammed the knife on the counter. "Empty the register, now." Marcus's legs froze. His throat dried up as he stood motionless, watching the scene unfold. Mr. Patel's hands trembled as he opened the drawer and pulled out the cash. "Hurry, man," Jamal barked, shoving Marcus forward. "Grab it." Marcus's hands shook as he scooped the bills, shoving them into his hoodie pocket. For a split second, his eyes met Mr. Patel's, tired, frightened eyes filled with disappointment. Marcus felt like a thief not just of money but of something far heavier, his own innocence. As they bolted out of the store, Jamal laughed. "See, easy, we kings now, bro." But Marcus didn't feel like a king. He felt like a prisoner of his own choices. The money in his pocket weighed heavier than chains. Somewhere in his chest, a voice whispered, "This is only the beginning, and it won't end well." That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. His mom was still at work. The cash sat in his drawer, staring back at him like a curse. He thought about Mr. Patel's eyes, about the fear he had caused. Sleep didn't come easy. For the first time, Marcus realized that crime wasn't just about survival. It came with scars you couldn't see. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus found himself slipping deeper into a life he never thought he'd live. The cash from the corner store job was gone quickly, half on groceries for his mother, half wasted in the streets with Jamal. But Jamal wasn't done. He was hungry for more. One evening, as the sun bled red across Chicago's skyline, Jamal came running up to Marcus's apartment with a wide grin. "Big score tonight, bro," Jamal whispered, eyes gleaming. "Not some dusty corner store. We hit. In a rival crew's stash house. Guns, cash, drugs, the works. We walk out rich." Marcus froze. "A stash house? That's not stealing from some old man. That's dangerous, Jamal. These dudes don't play games." Jamal leaned closer, his voice sharp. "You scared? This is how we level up. One night and we're set. No more scraps, no more begging. Don't you want out of this life?" Marcus thought about his mother's tired hands, the overdue bills stacked on the kitchen counter, and his own restless hunger for a better life. Against his better judgment, he nodded. That night, under the cover of darkness, Marcus and Jamal joined two older gang members outside a rundown brick house on the west side. The windows were barred, and loud music thumped from inside. The plan was simple. Kick the door, grab what they could, and get out fast. Masks on, hearts racing, the door crashed open. The chaos that followed was nothing like Marcus imagined. Shouts, fists, the flash of knives. Then, suddenly, gunfire. Marcus hit the floor as bullets tore through the living room walls. He smelled gunpowder, heard glass shattering, people screaming. His ears rang as Jamal dragged him behind a couch. "Take the bag," Jamal shouted, shoving a duffel filled with bricks of cash and powder into Marcus's arms. Before Marcus could move, one of the rival gang members lunged at Jamal with a pistol. A single shot rang out. Jamal's body jerked violently and he collapsed to the ground. Blood spread fast across his shirt. Marcus screamed, panic flooding him. He tried to drag his friend, but more shots whizzed past. Survival instincts kicked in. He grabbed the bag and bolted out the back door into the alley. The night air hit him like ice. His chest heaved, his hands sticky with Jamal's blood. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Marcus ran and ran, but no matter how far he went, he couldn't outrun what had just happened. His best friend lay bleeding in that house. The money in his hands felt cursed, and for the first time, Marcus realized crime didn't just steal money, it stole lives. That night, as he hid in an abandoned lot clutching the bloody duffel, Marcus whispered to himself, "This ain't the life. This can't be the life." But the streets had already marked him, and the blood spilled that night was only the beginning. Marcus couldn't shake the images from his mind. Jamal's lifeless body, the echo of gunfire, the burning sirens chasing him in the distance. Sleep was no longer an escape. It was a torment filled with nightmares. For 2 days, he stayed hidden in an abandoned garage on the far end of the block. Clutching the duffel bag like it was both his salvation and his curse. Inside, stacks of cash and drugs gleamed under the dim light. But every time he looked at it, he saw Jamal's blood. Meanwhile, the streets were buzzing. News spread fast in Chicago. A stash house hit, a shootout, one dead. Everyone was talking, but no one knew for sure who had pulled the job. But the cops were closing in. Detective Ryan Callahan, a seasoned officer with 20 years on the force, stood at the crime scene shaking his head. The walls were riddled with bullet holes, blood stains smeared across the floor, and neighbors whispering about masked kids running off into the night. Another gang mess, Callahan muttered, but deep down, he knew this wasn't just a typical turf war. Something about the scene felt sloppy, unprofessional. This was kids, scared kids, caught in a game too big for them. He turned to his partner, put word out, "We're looking for someone young, probably hurt, maybe carrying cash. They won't stay hidden long." Back in the garage, Marcus debated his next move. His mother hadn't seen him in 2 days, and guilt was tearing him apart. Should he go home? Should he dump the bag? Should he run? His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You got what's ours. We're coming for it." Marcus's blood ran cold. The rival crew knew, and if they knew, the police wouldn't be far behind. That evening, he finally returned home, His mother, exhausted from a double shift, nearly cried when she saw him. "Marcus, where have you been? I've been worried sick." She hugged him tight, her hands trembling. He wanted to confess everything, but when he opened his mouth, the words died. Instead, he just whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom, I just got lost." But trouble was already at their door. That night, as Marcus sat by the window, he noticed a black car parked across the street. The engine idled, lights off, two silhouettes sitting inside, watching, waiting. Marcus's chest tightened. He realized he wasn't just running from the law. He was trapped between the police, the gangs, and his own guilt. The net was tightening around him, and sooner or later there would be no escape. Marcus's heart thudded in his chest as he peeked through the window blinds. The black car was still their two men sitting inside, their faces faintly lit by the glow of a cigarette. Every instinct screamed that they weren't cops. They were worse. He turned away from the window, pacing the small living room. His mother was asleep on the couch, her face lined with exhaustion. She had no idea that danger lurked just outside her door. Marcus whispered to himself, "I gotta fix this before it's too late." The next day, Marcus tried to reach out to Reggie, an older neighborhood hustler who had always looked out for him, and Jamal. Reggie wasn't a saint, but he had connections and knew how the streets worked. If anyone could help Marcus get rid of the cursed duffel bag, it was him. Reggie met Marcus in the back of a run-down auto shop, chewing on a toothpick and eyeing him carefully. "Word on the street is, you and Jamal pulled something stupid," Reggie said, his voice low. "Now Jamal's dead and you sitting on money that ain't yours." Marcus clenched his fists. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanna make it right." Reggie leaned closer, his tone sharp. "Make it right? Kid, once blood's spilled, there ain't no making it right. But maybe I can help you walk away, for a price." Marcus hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. "Fine, what do I have to do?" Reggie smirked, patting his shoulder. "Bring me the bag, I'll handle the rest." That night, Marcus returned home with a fragile sense of hope, but as he opened his apartment door, his stomach dropped. The living room was wrecked, drawers pulled out, furniture overturned, glass shattered. His mother was nowhere to be seen. On the wall, scrawled in red spray paint, were three chilling words, "We want ID." Marcus's knees buckled. He called out desperately, "Mom, Mom," but there was no answer. Moments later, his phone buzzed again. A picture message appeared. His mother tied to a chair, fear etched across her face. A text followed, "Bring the bag, 1 hour, come alone." Marcus's world spun. His mother, the only person who had ever believed in him, was now a hostage because of his choices. Betrayal burned in his chest. Reggie's smug face replayed in his mind. Had he sold him out? For the first time, Marcus felt the true cost of the streets. It wasn't just money, it wasn't even his own life, it was the people he loved. He clutched the phone, whispering through gritted teeth, "I'll fix this, even if it kills me." Marcus ran through the alleys, clutching the duffel bag tight. His mother's terrified face haunted his mind. The text's words echoed louder than the pounding of his footsteps. "Bring the bag, 1 hour, come alone." But fate had other plans as Marcus reached the corner of 79th Street, flashing red, and blue lights blinded him. Police cars swerved, blocking his path. "Freeze, drop the bag." An officer shouted, guns aimed steady. Marcus's chest heaved. His first instinct was to run, but deep down he knew it was over. He dropped to his knees, the duffel spilling open, bundles of cash and bricks of drugs scattering across the pavement. The officers swarmed him, cuffing his wrists tight behind his back. The cold metal bit into his skin. Hours later, Marcus sat in a dimly lit interrogation room. His hoodie was stained with dirt, his face pale, his eyes hollow. Across from him sat Detective Ryan Callahan, the same officer who had been at the Stash House crime scene. Callahan studied him silently for a moment before speaking. "You're young. Too young to be sitting here with blood on your hands. Wanna tell me how a kid like you ends up in a mess like this?" Marcus stared at the table, silent. Callahan leaned forward. "Listen, Marcus, we know about the stash house, we know about Jamal, but here's the thing. We also know you're not the mastermind. Someone's using kids like you as pawns. You cooperate, maybe you get a shot at turning this around." Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to confess, to spill everything about Reggie, the gangs, his kidnapped mother, but fear held him back. If the streets found out he talked, his mom wouldn't stand a chance. So he muttered, "I got nothing to say." Callahan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Then you leave me no choice." He stood and signaled to the guard, "Take him to holding." The cell door clanged shut behind Marcus. The stench of sweat and stale air filled his nose. Around him, hardened men stared with cold, lifeless eyes. He felt like prey dropped in a cage of wolves. Alone on the hard bench, Marcus whispered to himself, "Mom, hold on. I'll find a way out." But for now, the reality was harsh and inescapable. Marcus Hill was just another number behind bars, trapped between the law, the gangs, and the guilt that ate at his soul. And outside those steel bars, his mother's life still hung in the balance. The clang of steel echoed every time a guard walked past the row of cells. Marcus sat on the cold bench, his head buried in his hands, his stomach churned. Not from the bland prison food, but from the thought of his mother tied to a chair, waiting for a rescue that might never come. For 2 nights, he barely slept. He replayed the moment he was arrested, the bag spilling open, the flashing lights. Every path forward seemed blocked. Gangs on one side, cops on the other, and his own guilt crushing him in between. But on the 3rd night, something changed. A calm, steady voice broke the silence. "Young blood, you're staring at the floor like it holds all the answers." Marcus looked up. Across the cell block sat an older inmate, broad shoulders, gray streaks in his beard, and eyes that carried the weight of years. He introduced himself as David Carter, once a notorious gang enforcer, now serving 20 years for armed robbery. David leaned against the bars. "I seen kids like you before. Smart ones, ones with futures, but the streets got a way of convincing you that fast money is freedom. You already figured out it ain't, didn't you?" Marcus stayed quiet, but his silence was an answer. David continued, his voice softer now. "You remind me of myself. Thought I was untouchable, thought I was providing for my family, but the truth, I left my kids fatherless. My wife divorced me, and all I got is 4 walls and regret." Marcus clenched his fists. I didn't mean for any of this. My mom, she's in trouble because of me." His voice cracked for the first time. David's expression hardened, but his tone stayed calm. "Then you got 2 choices, son. You keep running in circles until the streets eat you alive, or you face the mess you made and fight like hell to fix it. That's the difference between dying a criminal and living for redemption." Marcus's eyes stung. For the first time in weeks, he felt something besides fear. He felt the weight of responsibility, redemption. Marcus whispered. The word tasted foreign but powerful. David nodded slowly. "It won't be easy. You'll have to trust the right people, maybe even the law. But if you want to save your mom, you'll need to step into the light, even if it blinds you at first." That night, Marcus lay awake on the thin mattress, David's words echoing in his mind. For the first time, he wondered if prison wasn't just a cage. It might also be a chance to become someone better, but the clock was ticking. His mother's life still hung by a thread, and the streets wouldn't wait for Marcus Hill to find himself. The morning sun bled through the small barred window of Marcus's cell. For the first time since his arrest, he didn't wake up with panic in his chest. He woke up with resolve. David's words had struck something deep inside him. Face the mess you made, and fight like hell to fix it. Marcus knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed help, even if it meant trusting the very people he had been running from the police. Later that afternoon, Detective Ryan Callahan returned to the prison to check in on Marcus. He walked into the cell block, his sharp eyes scanning the young inmate. "You ready to talk yet?" Callahan asked, arms crossed. Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, but only if you promise me something." Callahan raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Marcus leaned forward, his voice trembling. "My mom, they've got her, the gang. Reggie, he set me up. If I tell you everything, you gotta make sure she's safe." Callahan's eyes narrowed at the name. He had suspected Reggie's involvement for months, but never had proof. Now, Marcus was offering him the missing piece. "You help me take Reggie down, I'll move mountains to get your mom out of this alive," Callahan said firmly. For the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. He nodded. "All right, I'll tell you everything." Over the next hour, Marcus revealed everything. The corner store robbery, the stash house ambush, Jamal's death, and finally, the kidnapping of his mother. Callahan listened closely, scribbling notes, his jaw tightening at each new detail. When Marcus finished, silence filled the room. Callahan finally spoke. "You've made a lot of mistakes, son, but you're young, and this might be your chance to make it right. We'll set a plan, but you have to understand, once you step into this, there's no turning back." Marcus nodded. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. "I don't care what happens to me, just save my mom." That evening, back in his cell, Marcus told David about the deal. David smiled faintly. "That's it, young blood. That's the turning point. You're choosing to fight for something bigger than yourself." Marcus clenched his fists. "No more running, no more hiding. I'll face them, all of them." David's voice was calm, almost proud. "Then you just might walk out of here with more than freedom. You might walk out with redemption." As Marcus lay on the thin mattress, his heart beat not with fear, but with determination. For the first time, the future wasn't just a blur of shadows. It held the faint outline of light. But the battle ahead would be bloody, dangerous, and unforgiving. The streets weren't done with him yet. The plan came together quickly. Detective Callahan knew the gang would expect Marcus to show up with the duffel bag. That meant Marcus had to play bait. Dangerous, but the only way to draw them out and save his mother. Marcus sat in the back of the police van, his wrists no longer cuffed, his heartbeat hammering against his ribs. He wore a wire under his hoodie, and a decoy bag filled with worthless paper sat at his side. Callahan crouched down in front of him. "Listen, kid. The moment they take the bag, our team moves in. Don't try to be a hero. Just keep them talking until we strike. You understand?" Marcus nodded, though fear twisted in his stomach. Don't try to be a hero. But what if that's exactly what he needed to be? The meeting spot was an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the south side. Marcus walked in alone, every step echoing on the concrete floor. His eyes darted through the shadows until he saw them. 3 men standing near the center, and in the middle, tied to a chair, his mother. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Marcus," she cried, muffled by duct tape across her mouth. "Shut her up." One of the men barked, shoving her roughly. Marcus's blood boiled, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I brought the bag," he said, tossing it forward. "Now let her go." From the shadows, Reggie stepped out. His grin was wide, cruel. "Look at you, Marcus. Thought you were ready for the big leagues, but you never understood the streets. You're just a scared kid who got lucky. Until now." Marcus glared at him. "You set me up. Jamal's dead because of you. My mom's suffering because of you." Reggie laughed coldly. "That's the price of business, and now you pay yours." He signaled to his men to grab Marcus. At that moment, the warehouse doors burst open. "Police, drop your weapons." Callahan's voice thundered as armed officers stormed in. Gunfire erupted. Bullets ricocheted off steel beams, sparks flying. Marcus dove behind a crate, his ears ringing. He saw his mother struggling in the chair, screaming against the tape. Reggie pulled a pistol, aiming straight at Marcus. "This ends tonight." Adrenaline surged. Marcus grabbed a loose pipe from the ground and hurled it with all his strength. It struck Reggie's hand, the gun clattering across the floor. In the chaos, Callahan tackled Reggie, pinning him down. Marcus scrambled to his mother, cutting her free with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched him tightly. "I thought I lost you," she sobbed. "It's okay, Mom," Marcus whispered, holding her close. "I'm done running. I'm done with all of it." Minutes later, Reggie and his crew were in handcuffs, dragged out under flashing red and blue lights. Callahan walked over to Marcus, his expression softer than usual. "You did good, kid. You faced it head on. That takes guts." Marcus nodded, still holding his mother. "I don't want this life anymore. I just want a chance to make things right." Callahan studied him, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Redemption's not easy, Marcus, but tonight you earned your first step." And for the first time in a long while, Marcus believed it. The warehouse was silent now. Police cars lined the street outside, their flashing lights reflecting off the broken windows. Reggie and his men were shoved into the back of cruisers, shouting curses that echoed into the night. But Marcus wasn't looking at them anymore. He was standing beside his mother, her trembling hand wrapped tightly around his. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever: peace. The next morning, Marcus sat across from Detective Callahan in a small precinct office. His mother sat beside him, her eyes tired but hopeful. Callahan flipped through a folder, then looked up. "You've given us more than enough to bury Reggie and cripple his crew. That's no small thing, but your part in this. It can't just vanish. The DA is willing to cut you a deal given your cooperation." Marcus swallowed. "What kind of deal?" "You'll spend some time in juvenile detention," Callahan explained, "but instead of wasting away, you'll enter a rehabilitation program, education, counseling, job training. You'll have a chance to build something better." Marcus glanced at his mother. She squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. "Take it, Marcus. Please, this is your chance to start over." For the first time, Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'll do it. I don't care how hard it is. I want to change." Weeks later, Marcus walked through the gates of the juvenile facility, not in shackles of fear, but with a strange sense of purpose. The place was strict, but it wasn't just about punishment. It was about rebuilding. He enrolled in classes, worked in the kitchen, and spent long evenings talking with mentors who had walked the same dark roads. Letters from his mother came every week, filled with encouragement and prayers. And every so often, David Carter, the old inmate who had planted the first seed of change, sent Marcus words of advice through the prison ministry program. 1 year later, Marcus stood in front of a small group of teenagers at a community center on the south side. His voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as he spoke. "I thought crime was the only way out," he told them. "But it only trapped me deeper. I lost my best friend, I nearly lost my mom, and I almost lost myself, but I got a second chance. And I don't want you to wait until it's too late. You can choose differently. You can fight for a better life." The kids listened, some nodding, some staring at the floor the way Marcus once did, and in their eyes, Marcus saw reflections of his old self, angry, lost, desperate, but he also saw the possibility of hope. That night, Marcus walked home with his mother, the city lights glowing above them. The shadows of his past were still there, but they no longer controlled him. A new dawn had come, and with it, a promise. He would never again be defined by the streets. He would be defined by the fight for redemption. Thanks for watching.